Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm excited to talk about what we're going to talk about today, which is kind of focus and really outsourcing and delegating what you're not good at and focusing what you are good at and what energizes you. And my guest today is Casey. She has been going through a lot of these same things as well. We were just talking about it a bit, and we're excited to share it with you. Professional real estate investors know that it's not really about the real estate. In fact, real estate is just a vehicle to freedom. A group of over 100 of the nation's leading real estate investors from across the country meet several times a year at the Investor Fuel Real Estate Mastermind to share ideas on how to strengthen each other's businesses, but also to come together as friends and build more fulfilling lives for all of those around us. On today's show, we're going to continue our conversation of fueling our businesses and fueling our lives. I'm glad you're here. Hey, Casey, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Good to see you. Good to see you. It's always interesting. I guess lately I've had a number of people on that are in the DFW market as well, where I'm at. And so we're effectively, on one way or another, neighbors relative to the average person watching the show, I guess. So anyway, excited to see you, neighbor.
Yeah, I know, right? And whenever you have a meet at the, what is it, that coffee place we love to go to all the time?
Oh, Turbo.
Around the corner. Yeah, it's amazing how close you actually are.
Yeah, really. You're really close. Yeah, you're really close. And so you guys, what we're going to talk about today is, and Casey's been through this, her business has evolved, my business has evolved in a lot of ways where we find some things that we like to do and we're good at, and we both actually, coincidentally, totally different things, but turn them into services to help other real estate investors and allow them to focus on what they're good at and outsource other things. And so what we want for you guys is to really focus on what you're good at, what you enjoy doing, focus on what energizes you, and get rid of the stuff that's kind of bogging you down so it can kind of set you free a little bit. And part of that will be learning about Casey's kind of story and I guess path. So tell us a little bit about your background, Casey, kind of how you got to where you are.
Yeah, so I have a pretty colorful background. I had nothing to do with real estate for several years, honestly, like in politics, media analyst, a whole different life. It wasn't until, a few years ago, it's probably been about 5 years or so, I actually got into sales locally with windows and siding. And it got to a point where I was kind of sitting there and I did pretty well at it. We did like one call closes. So we were going into people's houses, all the uncomfortable things that most investors kind of hate or start out hating. And then I realized like there's a cap. So you kind of look at the house and, look around and be like, I wonder if I just sell the whole house. So I ended up getting licensed with the intention of going into investing anyway. I thought it was more creative, a little bit more fun. So I kind of entered a local, RIA, kind of got plugged in, started networking, and just decided to kind of go all in about, it's probably been 3 years now. And so I'm fairly new to the space, and I've been only in the DFW market, but we did about 40 deals or so our first couple of years, not bad for newbies, a mixture of assignments, fix and flip, stopping foreclosures, listings, things like that. And I kind of just got well versed in every aspect of it because I was in acquisitions. I had come from sales. It was something I was really good at. So I know what it's like to be in that position. I know how they think. And then of course you have to dispo it too when you're, doing it on your own. As we all know, we kind of sit in every single seat. And after about a year or so, I started to feel that pain of, is this what it's like? This is tough.
Does it get better than this? Yeah. It's a hard business.
Yeah, you have those wins and that joy, but I mean, it's a grind, as we all know, to keep that consistency in that pipeline. So it really wasn't until I had actually met Gary and started looking at, hey, everyone in our groups talk about how to do marketing better, how to do sales closes, yada, yada, yada. But nobody really talks about a lot of the other areas, like, how to delegate or how to arrange your business or how to do your processing. And so it wasn't until I started learning about that side of things that I started to kind of really look at my operation and think, what is it that I really wanted to do? What is it that I'm actually good at that energizes me? And so that's when I made the switch to transaction coordinating, which isn't the most glamorous. But it kind of fulfilled my brain because it's so creative and so different and it looks different. And it got to a point where I knew so much about the closings and whatnot. how to stop the foreclosures, because I kind of did everything title did before I knew what title could do.
Right.
And it got to a point where I started consulting other investors just on how to clear title and get around some of the more complicated issues. As we all know, that's where most of the money is. So I kind of found a little bit of a niche there, and kind of decided to go that direction.
Yeah, now you're doing transaction coordination for other real estate investors all over the country. So
Yes.
that's amazing. Honestly, it's interesting how we all have, real estate investing, like nobody really teaches you this. You just kind of find out ultimately. Like you said, even if you have a coach or a mentor or somebody, they often just talk about lead generation and sales or dispo, high level stuff, right? Kind of the bookends of the business, but there's a whole bunch of stuff in the middle that is like the back office stuff, and it's just necessary, right? It has to happen. In fact, it'll kill your deals if you don't do it well. And I think, what we did just like you is we invested for a long time, and I coached for a long time. And the single biggest challenge that every real estate investor has is consistent, high quality lead generation.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of joke, like the most asked question on the planet of the earth, at least asked to me, is like, what's the best list to market to? It's like there's this silver bullet, and there's not. It's just like grunt work and consistency and getting it done. And so ultimately I'm like, you know what? I'm tired of answering this question. We're just going to create an agency and generate leads for people. And so that's, kind of what we've done. And I think over time too, whether it's a short period of time or over a long period of time, you start to find things in the business that you enjoy doing, that you're good at, that you like problem solving or whatever it might be. And then for some people, that ends up becoming a service that you can provide for other people and help other investors out, right?
Yeah, honestly, it's almost identical. I kind of realized that, people kept asking me, hey, how do I clear this? Hey, do you mind just reviewing this? Can you read this title? Can you tell me what I can do? And I thought, why don't I just charge people for this?
Yeah.
Because,
Or sometimes they're like, I'll pay you for it. Would you help me just answer some questions for me? And you're like, eventually you're like, huh, I could get paid doing this? Okay. I thought it was
right?
fun, but yeah.
And it was crazy, to be honest. It started because I couldn't find anybody to do my transactions that knew the breadth of what I did, simply because I was in it all day, every day. And I think that if you're, we talked about this a little bit before, if you're going to hire out something, you either need to be in it to know what to expect, and or to train, or you're going to have to hire someone who just knows. This is their wheelhouse. This is their expertise. Let's not reinvent the wheel. I don't have to spend time training them. I just need to train them a little bit on how maybe I want my etiquette done, or how I want my follow-up. But I'm finding that a lot of my clients are asking me now, like, well, do you do consulting? I said, that's technically what this is, like at the end of the day. So it's kind of really opened my eyes about how, well, first of all, we all know we can't do everything as much as we like to think we can as entrepreneurs. It is not possible. So you have to figure out, I'm either going to reinvent this wheel because I feel like I can do it better, or I'm just going to find the people that can fill in my blanks, and I'm not going to focus on my weaknesses. I'm just going to focus on those strengths. And you're going to go a lot further.
That's the problem with a lot of small businesses. Probably this isn't unique to real estate, but one thing that is a little bit different in real estate is we're all so cheap. Like we're trying to, because it all starts with trying to buy properties at a deep discount, right? It's like, okay, in order to make any money, I've got to buy it cheap. I've got to find a cheap contractor. Like everything we try to do is cheap. And then what ends up happening is, along the line, we're like, well, I'll just do it myself. So we try to do everything, right? And if you really look at real estate business, if you were to kind of compare it to, any other business out there, I guess a lot of other businesses probably fall into this, but it's like a bunch of businesses kind of bolted together. Mm-hmm. Sales and acquisitions up front is a unique business. For example, you could just buy from other wholesalers and close deals and just be a rehabber, and you don't do any marketing or lead gen or acquisitions activities. You just are willing to give up that margin, no different than Walmart is willing to pay Frito-Lay to, be a supplier to them, even though Frito-Lay is also making money, right? And right. So, or on the dispo side, there's a lot of ways you could do that too. You could just list everything on the MLS and make it easier, or you could hire a dispositions person to help build your list on who to market to and help go through the sales process. And so it's like a bunch of little businesses that are bolted together. And inevitably, like you said, there's stuff that I think every real estate investor enjoys more than others. and they tend to focus on what they're good at. Unfortunately, a lot of them are so cheap they never try to outsource or delegate what they're not good at because they feel like they can't afford it, which is kind of the kiss of death in terms of growing your business. If you try to do everything yourself and you can't afford to add a team, then you don't have a business, you have a job at best, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny you say that. It's like we are, we're cheap, but at the same time, we always want that quick, easy money. So it's like we're cheap, but we don't want to hire out to make it easier. Yeah. So what if your margin goes down a little bit, but you're not working as hard for it, and it becomes then you have to think about what is my cost per hour really that I'm making, right? Like I'm actually making like $100 an hour, $150 an hour. Like you got to kind of look at, I think people have to reset their mind you're just retraining your brain to think of it differently. How much do you want to cry at night for that $20,000 check?
That's funny. Yeah.
At the end of the day, most people really, they post pictures of their checks and whatnot, but you don't know how much of that is really going in their pocket ever. And so I spoke with someone who really, honestly, I spoke with a very successful investor. He's probably worth about 10 million or so at this point. And he kind of made he always talks about transactional risk. And we had a conversation where I kind of had this idea to do this. And he looked at me and said, I didn't even know people like you existed when I was doing deals. I would get back into it simply if I had someone that could manage it and had the knowledge. And I thought that was interesting because I'm like, you've gotten to 10 million net worth and didn't have a single person handle your transactions. Like that's stressful. That was one of the big reasons he left and started doing other things, was just the stress got too much. And he was like, you think about it. Every single transaction you make is a risk. So, I mean, legally, you think about how many parties you have involved. If any one of them comes back or an error, claims fraud or anything like that, guess who they're going to come after? Anybody who they can find a name for that was associated with that transaction.
That's
so
true.
There is risk in all areas. You've got risk on calling your DNC lists. You've got risk legally with documents. Not maybe a title company didn't do something right. I mean, you cannot trust really anybody, and nobody's going to care about your deals as much as you. So you have to ask yourself, how much, what do I want control over, and who am I going to trust to control the other aspects of it? Because, this is an exhausting business, and there's a lot of anomalies in it.
Yeah, that's one thing that I would say a lot of real estate investors, I mean, inherently there's a lot of people that come and go, right? And you see the market has shifted. We've got all this COVID crap going on and stuff, but you've seen, even aside from that, people that used to be bigger players that are nowhere to be found now. And people that you didn't know a year ago that are crushing it right now. It's just like, so I think what happens is what people don't really figure out, they never really take into account, is there's a high level of burnout and turnover. And it's because they get into this business. One of it is because they don't outsource and delegate anything. They're trying to do everything themselves and they get burned out. And so how do you decide kind of where to delegate or, outsource, or whether you should delegate to an internal person or outsource it to a company or a vendor that does those things? Like, how do you kind of start that process?
Yeah, I would say, because honestly, I reached that burnout because I'm kind of one of those really weird profiles that can sit in any seat. So I'm like a chameleon type.
Yeah.
And so it was hard for me to discern that. Everybody said, know what you're good at. And I was like, I have no idea how to figure that out. Like, I remember going to Gary Harper. He tested me and I said, so what now? And he goes, you can sit anywhere you want. I said, this doesn't help me. Yeah. So for me, I didn't know, I had to honestly sit in all of them. So that was a decision I made. I said, I'm going to spend some time in every single seat until I can really figure out what drains me and what energizes me. And then what's that grid that we talk about sometimes? It's like, make a checkbox where in one, it's everything that you are good at, that you love, everything you're good at that you don't like, everything that you don't like and aren't good at, and then you delegate anything that's below that line. So
right. If you're not good at it and you don't like it, like those are usually the first, like that's the first thing you should get rid of. You're not good at it and you don't even like it. So why do it?
And yeah, exactly. And you're not good at it. Or maybe like you like it, but you still aren't good at it. I mean, guys, this BS of like working on your weaknesses, forget it. Like, when it comes to like you were designed and built to fill a very special niche that a lot of people wish they had, so don't try to be what you're not, because then you're just kind of approaching things like, what's that word? Like lukewarm, with lukewarm passion. And we know that if you're going to be grinding every single day, you got to make sure that it's not motivation, all the time. It's the discipline, because, having the understanding. But at the end of the day, you're going to be energized by what you're building. And I think that's most important. So if you don't know yourself, first of all, try to do that. Get yourself tested. Like, DISC or PI was really eye-opening for me. I was told so often that I was like an integrator detail type, and I can focus like nobody's business. I can look at a computer for 12 hours and not eat and not move and not know what day it is. But if I do that for too long, I'm going to be very drained and not great. When I'm in a room talking ideas with people, I found I loved it. And so I kind of found out that I'm actually a little bit more visionary than I thought, with an ability to sit in the seats. So for me personally, how I figured it out was doing that. I got knowledge from everything, and then I just decided, well, what is it that people really aren't good at that I am really good at? And that's when I kind of found that little niche to focus on.
Yeah, that's great.
And then for me, it was kind of like, what gets me up in the morning every day? For me, it's because I'm accountable to other people's deals.
Yeah.
And I just have a personality where, I'm going to get up for you and I'm serving you, and it's on my shoulders. That's why it's kind of like Atlas Shrugged, you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders.
Yep.
And it's important, and I'm held accountable to you. And that's what gets me up. And I love that, because I am a piece to your business that you really aren't going to be able to do well. And it gives you peace of mind. And so I like that.
That's great. Yeah, that's whether you're a service provider, not everybody's going to feel this way, but whether you're a service provider, what you just said, I literally have never heard anybody else say that. And I feel that way. And I've said it before, is because in one of my businesses now, our main business that's actually blowing up, Investor Machine, I have a business partner in that. And I think for the first time, and one of the things that I said is one of the reasons it's taking off is I have effectively an accountability partner. It's the same if you JV with other people, and not everybody's going to resonate with this probably, but some of you might. One of the benefits of having a partner or being a service provider to other people is like, I refuse to let people down, but I'm good at letting myself down.
Yeah.
But, you know what I mean? But it's like, well, it's not going to hurt anybody other than me. But like, I'll be damned if I'm going to let anybody else down. So that's one of the things that, and honestly, it makes me a better business person. It makes me a better person because I'm challenged more to never disappoint anybody. But I don't really have a huge problem at disappointing myself. I mean,
yeah, I think most people are honestly like that. And I think we think of ourselves last. And ironically, the way I started thinking about it was, okay, we always sit here and I don't like this. I'm one of those like anomalies that hate the what is your why question, because I didn't know for so long, and I still am not super sure. The only thing that seems, in stone for me is I really like serving and helping people figure out problems.
Yep.
But I think what's interesting is people say, well, why are you in real estate, or why do you do this? Oh, for the freedom. But freedom to do what? Like, exactly.
Right.
What is it that you want the freedom to do? And is the freedom the result, or is the freedom the process, right? So we want the freedom because we have the job to, or the business, and maybe we get there, to go when we want, make the appointments when we want, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I put myself in a position where I don't fully have that freedom because I work during title hours, right? But I still can do what I need to and delegate. But the point being is that freedom is honestly happening now, right? It's not necessarily in the future. And I think people miss that. So in order to get there, you have to ask yourself these questions. What can I delegate to have that freedom, which is the purpose of me even starting in real estate? And then you get into it and realize how locked down you are doing every single position, every single job, and you're exhausted. You're like, man, they said this would be fun. They said this is free. They said I would get big checks. And then that reality hits. And then that's why some people don't make it. But I think if you reoriented your brain to think it that way, you might have an easier time delegating.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I talk about this all the time. Like for me, freedom isn't like sitting on the beach, like doing nothing. Like that's not me, but it's like doing what I like to do. Right. So it's never a job. Like I don't think about retirement because I don't even know what that means. Like retire for me, it's doing what you want, when you want, with whom you want. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's like, but for me, it's not working because I enjoy working. I enjoy the challenge of it. That's like my hobby. It's like, I'm not into Sudoku or crossword puzzles, but I'm into solving business problems or talking about business problems. And so doing what I do and getting to hang out with you and people like you, that energizes me. Right.
Yeah, for sure. And
Yeah, that's awesome.
I actually chose to only work with investors. Obviously, a lot of investors are licensed and work that way, but it's a different breed. Like
Yeah.
you're working with people that think outside the box with you, that are figuring out things that really, like you said, the Wild Wild West. It's the Wild Wild West, and we figure out creative ways of doing it. And I love working with clients that are like, "Hey, Casey, like, how can we figure this out? Like, let's make some phone calls because that's fun for me, rather than just the regulatory." Make sure you have this document and this document and this document. We really are approaching their business and saying, well, hey, what are you seeing in these markets? And we get to get super creative. And that fuels me every single day. Like I love it. I love being able to tell someone we're clear to close after 5 months.
Yeah, that's awesome. On the transaction management side, I think one of the things that happens a lot, and I've never outsourced my transaction management. We always did it. We've always done it internally with like an admin, right? But the thing is even that admin, I have them doing like everything, and so it's just one of the things they do. And we've lost deals over time, and I think a lot of real estate investors lose deals because they're just not great at communicating, or they're not great at I guess what I've had a tendency to do is to throw it over the fence to my title company. And the truth is we've always tried to work with investor friendly, kind of using my air quotes here again, investor friendly title companies, because they usually will deal with our crap, as investors. But not all title companies are that way. And so sometimes you find out, honestly, and I've had some really good title people. So if they're listening right now, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. A couple of them, I don't have a problem throwing under the bus, but we won't name any names. But it's that they never cared about my deals as much as I did. But
Yeah.
I didn't act the way that I just said by just throwing it over the fence and allowing somebody else to deal with it. So what happens is the communication is usually not the clearest to the seller. So sometimes the seller's like, I haven't heard from anybody in like a week, and then all of a sudden somebody else offers them more money or whatever, and they're just like decide to like, well, let me just contract it with this person because they don't really know they shouldn't do that or whatever.
Yeah.
And like
I
stuff
did.
goes south if somebody is not like responsible for that, on even though it's not necessarily a full-time job for an average investor, but if they don't treat it like it's a white glove approach, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I
Yeah.
think and listen, like you might be super great at marketing and closing deals and whatnot, and you literally lose a spread just because that exact thing happened. Most of these sellers don't really go through this process. So
Yeah.
they're in the
So
dark.
it's the first time for them probably, or for some of them, it's the first time in decades, like selling a house. So we take it for granted, but they don't know, right?
The number one thing though is trust. You might get their trust at the or at the signing table, and that's all well and good. But we all know that it could. I'm seeing like like a 30 to 60-day roll on closes right now because of everything that happened. And so
Yeah.
you have got to give them comfort and maintain that trust. You have to earn it. So having someone in that seat is super important because I think I was telling you before this call, I've got a client up in New York where there's a lot of extra parties involved. It's an attorney state. So you've got attorneys, you've got an agent, you've got a seller or a buyer. I mean, there's twice as many parties. And simply one person is not telling the other person what's going on or what they want, and they're just waiting for
Right.
somebody to call them. And then the other person's like, well, nobody's paying attention. Why wasn't this done? I know how long these things take. So it's like weeks go by without you could have just gotten, oh, why didn't they just call me? I would have told them that this is the situation, and then we can move forward. So I think in that role, if you're doing any kind of volume, or if you're going after certain lists with certain issues like affidavits are consistent or tax issues or things like that, you got to have somebody that can actually talk to your sellers through these issues, because some of them, all they see is you told me you'd buy my house and this is taking forever, and then I can get on the phone and be like, well, actually, here's what happened. Do you have any insight in this? And then they start going, oh, that's right, my brother, he's in prison, and then you start to like piece it together.
Yeah.
But if you don't know how to talk to them after you get it under contract, or even during, like these are questions you can ask people, you have huge chunks of your story missing, and you're just relying on title company who's only looking at documents that may or may not have been recorded, and they're just sitting on their hands because they're expecting you to figure out a problem.
Right.
So I see it as such a huge piece of the puzzle of the problem solving side. You can maybe give them the solution to get them to sign, but if you don't actually solve the problem.
Yeah. Especially with types of deals that we buy, they're usually messy, right? Or they have a tendency
Oh
to
yeah.
have messy, some skeletons in the closet and all that stuff. So
I can honestly
Awesome.
tell you that out of the deals that I have or that I've closed, I think I've done about 400 in the last 8 or 9 months. I can honestly tell you, I've probably had clear to close on 1%. No joke.
Yeah.
It is always something, but that's the nature of who we work with. Those
Right.
are
Right.
so.
Yeah. Well, speaking of who we work with, so Casey, you've been a member of Investor Fuel for a little while now, huge giver in the group. Would you mind just kind of sharing your thoughts on what what your
Oh my
experience has
goodness.
been with Investor Fuel?
Investor Fuel. So, people ask me if I do any marketing or anything like that, and I say absolutely not because it's all about my network. I think Investor Fuel is one of the most. I mean, honestly, I would like to use the word elite because it truly, but it's like without being elite, it's elite. It's people in that room that are really doing deals in several markets. That's what I love. It's not just like a local mastermind, it's national. So you get insight into people's operations and what's working, not working, what kind of deals they're doing, laws, things like that. And we live in a virtual world now. So I think that's huge to be able to communicate and network with people like that. And if you ever have the opportunity to go into another market, people drop everything. I mean, I've gotten more recommendations for title companies and attorneys just through Investor Fuel that have honestly gotten me to where I am today. I mean, it's probably one of the most solid networks I have.
Awesome. Awesome. I appreciate that. So, and we're always here to help you
You
too.
guys are fun.
Yeah. We have a fun group for sure. So, so Casey, you run a transaction management business. If folks want to learn more about that or they want to get in touch with you, where can they go?
Yeah, so if you want to learn kind of about our services, you're just curious, even if you'd like to see what a transaction coordinator handles, even if you want to hire in-house or something like that, you can go to my website. It's just www.atlastcservices.com. You can get an idea of how we price things, what are some of the tasks we do, what markets we're in. So you kind of get your juices flowing that you can do this virtually and you don't necessarily have to have it in-house. I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, Atlas Transaction Coordinator Services. Just my name, is pretty unique. You can find me on Facebook. Send me a message. If I don't, I probably won't see it. Or email me. It's just Casey@atlastcservices.com if you want to have a chat. And I'm happy to also just start out there. If you guys just want insight, how many transactions somebody should handle, could handle, or you want to know those kinds of things, I'm an open book.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, good stuff. We'll add those links down below in the show notes for anybody that missed it or if you're listening when you're driving. So, Casey, thanks for joining us today. Good stuff.
I'm happy to be part of the family.
Yeah, always good to see you. And everybody, hopefully you got some value from this. You should really outsource or delegate what you don't get joy from and what you're not good at for sure, right? So you can focus on what you are good at. That's where you're going to see the most growth in your business and in your bank account, most likely, is when you focus on what you're good at and find a way to get the rest of it done without necessarily you. So hope you got some good value from today's show. If you haven't yet subscribed to us, you can subscribe to us, honestly, wherever you're watching or listening right now. So appreciate you a bunch. We'll see you on the next show. Are you an active real estate investor? If so, and you want to latch on to the power of surrounding yourself with over 100 of the nation's leading real estate investors, all committed to building stronger businesses and living richer, fuller lives, you should jump on a call with us to learn more about Investor Fuel. Simply visit investorfuel.com to get started.